bodhicitta is, right? Just so you can draw that connection. That is a brief meditation on bodhicitta. You have those two motivations there, right? I need to benefit sentient beings, that's the purpose of my life. Therefore, I need to attain enlightenment, right? But then it's not just that wish to attain enlightenment, but then we have what is called the wishing bodhicitta and the engaging bodhicitta. The wishing bodhicitta would just be, I need to benefit all sentient beings, therefore, may I attain enlightenment, right? We're going even one step further. I'm going to engage in the practices that lead to enlightenment, right? So it becomes engaging bodhicitta. Okay. Then do a glance meditation on the Lamrim teachings. So Lamrim, does everyone know? Anyone not hear of Lamrim before? It's a Tibetan phrase. Lam is path, Rim is stages. Okay? So in general, of all the various teachings given by Buddha, they're arranged in order of practice, actually by Atisha in his Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment. He arranged the teachings in order of practice. Okay? So then, if you, a glance meditation means, here in the next page and a half, we'll go over these words, but if you just kind of read this a little bit slowly, mindfully, and as you go through each, sentence, kind of reflect on the meaning, you can pause a little bit, then just have they say it creates an imprint of the entire path to enlightenment, right? Okay. So, if you have some familiarity with the teachings, you can do your own type of glance meditation on the Lamrim, right? You don't need to follow these words. You can also do it, there's different so-called Lamrim prayers, like foundational qualities, 3 principles, aspects of the path, right? Written by Tsongkhapa. You guys know these? Great. Okay? Or you can do this, right? With heartfelt feeling, contemplate as follows. Okay? So that's very important. Sometimes, we get to know all the words on the page, but it's like, like they said in Tibet, there was a parrot that could, oh Mani Padme Hum, right? Could say, oh Mani Padme Hum, right? But I don't think, I'm not against parrots, okay? But I don't think the parrot was contemplating the meaning, right? The profound meaning of the mantra. And therefore, limited benefit. Okay? So as we read this, then it's not just, going over the words, but trying to have some change in our minds and our hearts. Okay? So from beginningless lifetimes until now, I've experienced the general sufferings of samsara numberless times, especially the sufferings of the lower realms, the 3 lower realms. Okay, so I mentioned this, right? In Buddhist cosmology, samsara is beginningless. Okay, why? Because every moment of mind necessarily has to have a preceding moment of mind. Okay? Gets a little bit technical. We're going into the reasonings that establish past and future lives. There's not enough time to do all that. But the essence of the reasoning is having to do with, cause and effect need to be congruent. Okay? Congruent, like concordant. So, unlike the scientific materialistic worldview, right? In Buddhism, there is a concept of a mind that is separate from material. It's not material. So the mind is not the brain. Okay? Now, it depends on the brain, right? It's its basis, right? And there's, if you give me a blow to the head, then that will affect my mind, right? But it is not equated, okay? So the mind, they say, is clear and knowing, it's immaterial, and therefore what is the cause of the mind has to be something of that type, okay? So then if you go back to the first moment of mind in this life, it has to have a previous moment of mind that gave rise to it. And therefore, that's your last moment of your last life, right? Then you keep going, and you always have a previous moment of mind. Therefore, no beginning. Okay? Just, you don't have to agree, but that is how Dharmakirti argues in the Paramavartika second chapter. Okay? So now just pretend you're totally convinced. Okay? So then what would that imply? Right? That means, if there's beginningless samsaric lifetimes, what would that mean? Oh, I've experienced the general sufferings of samsara numberless times. Especially the sufferings of the three lower realms. There is no suffering that I have never experienced. Wow. Right? If samsara is beginningless, if your kind of, sojourn in samsara is beginningless, then, there's nothing new. That's why they call it a cycle, right? There's nowhere to go. Like a hamster in the wheel, there's nowhere to go. There's no suffering I have never experienced. When I think deeply about all of this, I'm gripped with terror and weep uncontrollably. So in Nagarjuna's letter to a friend, when he talks about the sufferings of samsara, he says, he gives these analogies. If you were to collect all the bones from the skeletons of your rebirths in samsara, and you stack them up, they would reach higher than Mount Sumeru, right? If you, were to collect all the milk that you drank from your mother's breast, it would be more than the great ocean. So then he says, but unless you attain liberation, the amount of milk you'll drink in the future will be even more than that. You understand? Right? So not only is samsara beginningless, if you don't achieve nirvana, it's also endless. You understand? So really, when you think deeply of all this, it should be terrifying. And you should weep uncontrollably. By the way, in my own limited experience, right? Don't be afraid to cry during your meditation. Really. It shows that some change is happening, right? Sometimes we don't like, especially maybe the men, it's like, macho, can't cry, right? No. Usually, they say our mind is like a rock, and you try to pour water on a rock, and then the water stays on the surface of the rock, right? So we need to somehow get it to seep in, Therefore, I must no longer allow myself to fall under the control of the disturbing, unsubdued minds, which are the causes, the all-arising truth that oblige me to experience the result true suffering. Okay, so now this is going, alluding to the so-called Four Noble Truths. Okay? Four Noble Truths, you guys know?
Yes.
Great. So, the Four Noble Truths is the content of the first teaching of the Buddha after he was enlightened. He gave this teaching in Sarnath, Deer Park. So the Four Noble Truths: truth of suffering, truth of the cause of suffering, truth of the cessation of suffering, truth of the path leading to the cessation of suffering. Okay? So, truth of suffering is what I've been talking about. Means the drawbacks of samsara. How samsara is like sitting on the tip of a needle. You know, as long as we're in samsara, we experience, aging, birth, aging, sickness, death, meeting with things we don't like, being separated from things. Meeting with things we don't like, being separated from things we do like, right? Not being able to accomplish things although we make great effort. Insatiability, rising from high, falling from high to low. All these are described in some detail in the Lama teachings. We have the 8 types of suffering, 6 types of suffering, 3 types of suffering, like that. Why do we experience all these types of suffering? Because of the disturbing, unsubdued minds. Okay? So that is all arising truth, normally, it's a word translation of what it is in Tibetan, kun jung dempa, right? So kun is all, jung in general is arising, dempa is truth. But normally it's called like, truth of the cause, right? Or true origins, okay? And what is the cause of suffering? The unsubdued minds, okay? As long as we're under the control of those, then we're obliged to experience the result, true suffering, okay? As long as I happily continue to follow these evil, disturbing, unsubdued minds with neither fear nor doubt, there's no difference between me and a mindless, crazy person, right? So, it's not hyperbole. You understand? Hyperbole? Like an exaggeration? No, it's not. It's crazy. Really, if we just pretend you understand this. Samsara is beginningless. Why have we been suffering? It's because we've been under the power of these unsubdued, afflictive emotions, and then we don't do anything to get out of the situation, and then we're obligated to experience even more suffering in the future. It's nuts. Like Einstein says, right? To engage in the same behavior over and over again and expect a different result is the height of insanity, right? Something like that. So, I forgot about this here.
Hold.
This is good. Okay. See, if I continue to follow the wrong conceptions, I merely ensure that I'll keep suffering for countless lives to come. When I think about this from the depths of my heart beyond mere words, I am unable to eat by day or sleep by night, and it makes me vomit uncontrollably. Thinking of my foolishness breaks my heart. My opinion, this is my opinion. You see, Lama Rinpoche, he wrote this kind of motivation, right? And so normally, we talk about vomit a lot, vomiting. Do we? No, I don't. But I think there's some special significance. And it's not just some mistake. He's not just trying to be like a, I don't know, shocking to us for no reason. Okay? But I think just having that very strong word there, it needs to show, unless we in our own practice, when we think of the suffering of samsara, the endless sufferings of samsara, we should get this, weeping uncontrollably, vomiting, we have to have that kind of revulsion to it, like really physical, breaking my heart. Like we have to really feel it. Unable to sleep, sleep at night, eat by day or sleep by night. One of my teachers at Sarah, he said this, told a story of a master in Tibet. So, you're in your room studying, and there's no ensuite bathrooms in Tibet, right? So there'd be like kind of an outhouse, right? But this master, he'd be studying all the time. Then when he has to go to the toilet, he would run. He would run to the toilet and run back. Understand? So, I don't think you understand. Actually, for monks, there is some provision, like, we shouldn't run. Okay? But in the Bodhisattva vows, there is another provision that says, if breaking your monk's vows would be more beneficial, then you're obligated to break them. So then people are like, hey, what are you running? He's like, every second that I'm not, in front of my book, studying, meditating, doing that, I see it as a big waste. So, where are we?
Saving time. He's saving time.
Yeah. So, one time Rinpoche at the Kopan course in Nepal. You met Rinpoche, right? I was at Rinpoche. What? What happened?
He gave me marshmallows or something.
Oh my gosh. The greatest loss. What are you doing next week? You coming to the Dharamsala? Huh?
I'm trying.
You'll try? Okay.
I mean, like, college.
Should I call your boss? I'll call your boss. I'll do it. Okay. Anyway, so for those of you who know Rinpoche, then in the Kopan course, right? Kopan course, a 1 month Lama course in Nepal. Then in the old days, there's Lama Yeshe. You see his photo? Yeah. And then Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and they would kind of co-teach the Kopan course, right? And so, now when you hear Rinpoche explain it, he says, at that time in the early days, he would always be talking about the sufferings of the lower realms, like all this very heavy sufferings of samsara, suffering of the lower realms, hells. And then, after 2 weeks, Lama Yeshe would come and he would talk about Bodhicitta, compassion. So in those days, I don't know, everyone loved Lama Yeshe.
Yeah.
So one day I hear, Rinpoche comes to this early Kopan course, gets on the teaching throne, and you know how he does, right? He'll, sit in meditation, Everyone is waiting with bated breath. What he's going to say, right? So meditating for 7 minutes. And it was if you knew where you were going to be reborn in your next life, you wouldn't sleep. What an awesomely skilled teacher, huh? Well, yeah. I think it's true. Anyway, when you come to understand and study more, then you see, actually all of the entire Buddha Dharma is here in this one page and 2 paragraphs, right? So part of why you should continue with a little bit more extensive studies is that the significance of some of these things that you'll see in these shorter texts will then kind of open up like a flower, right? So then you see, right, next paragraph. However, now I've received the inner condition, the precious human body, endowed with 8 freedoms and 10 endowments, that gives me the ability to achieve all happiness and perfection. Okay? So now here in the Lamrim, right? First he was talking about the general sufferings of samsara. Now, when we think about that, our situation, we've suffered from time without beginning. If we don't achieve enlightenment or liberation, we'll suffer without end in the future. We're heartbroken. We can't sleep, we're vomiting, right? That's where we should be. Okay? But then the ray of hope, right? If we don't achieve liberation, endless suffering in the future. But we can attain liberation. In general, countless beings have attained liberation and enlightenment in the past. Okay? So now, that's what we have to do. And there's not even one moment, actually, to be depressed. Because, wait a minute, now, I've received the inner condition, the outer condition. He's saying, we all now have the perfect opportunity to attain liberation in this very life, in this very body. Yeah? Because this precious human rebirth, you've heard of this before, right? Precious human rebirth, there's these 8 freedoms, 10 endowments. Okay? What basically that means, okay, we have all the inner and outer conditions in order to practice Dharma, in order to achieve liberation and enlightenment. Yes? Okay? So, in general, just to go over it quickly, the 8 freedoms, right? There's 4 freedoms having to do with not being born as in any of the 3 lower states of existence, hell beings, pretas, or animals, or as a so-called long-life God. Yeah. Anyway, maybe this is too much detail because time is running out. Anyway, forget about that. You all have it, right? Basically what that means is you need to meet with the teachings, you need to be smart enough to put them into practice, you need to have interest enough to put them into practice, you need to have leisure, enough free time to be able to come to teachings like this and then go home and meditate, right? All of you have that. And by the way, that's very rare in the world, right? So not everyone with a human rebirth has a precious human rebirth. Now, that's not to say that all humans aren't precious, okay? But this precious human rebirth is a particular type of fully qualified, basis with which to practice Dharma. Okay? So that's the inner condition. Then we've also met the outer condition, the holy Mahayana virtuous friend, who is extremely difficult to find, but can in a single second grant the highest state, the omniscient mind. So, do we take that literally? I don't. In a single second, grant the highest state, the omniscient mind. That's a bit difficult, right? But in general, you know, I was saying the Buddha trained for 3 countless great eons. Okay. See, with the practice of the Vajrayana teachings, okay, it is said that one can attain full enlightenment, not the mere liberation from samsara, but full enlightenment in one, not only just one lifetime, but one brief lifetime of this degenerate age, the Kali Yuga. One brief lifetime of this degenerate age. You understand? So, compared to 3 countless great eons, then, right, like for example, Milarepa, it said he was enlightened in 12 years. Right? So again, compared to 3 countless great eons, 12 years is like a second. Right? As well as the inner and outer conditions, I have met the teachings of the Buddha, the supreme medicine that dispels, without exception, all sufferings of migratory beings. Given my incredible good fortune, if I continue to seek mere temporal happiness or my own personal liberation from the bondage of disturbing, unsubdued minds and karma, the 2 causes of samsara, right? What difference is there between me and a foolish dumb animal? Okay. So here I think, foolish dumb animals aren't trying to attain liberation from samsara, but they are focused on just attaining, food, right? A mate, right? Comfort. I've been taking care of some stray cats down in Sarah, and they love to climb up into my sleeping bag and get really warm and cozy. So it's kind of a nice life. They go to sleep, But that's what animals are thinking of, right? Just this life, be comfortable, be well fed, find a special cat, whatever. That's it. So, if we, given this body that can attain liberation from samsara and enlightenment, if we don't do that, and instead just try to, achieve some kind of temporary happiness, like eating donuts, there's no difference between us and a foolish dumb animal. And such an attitude would be extremely upsetting from several viewpoints. From my own side, how shameless, right? And from the side of others, how very ungenerous, how selfish and cruel. How dare I cherish myself and renounce others? Aren't other sentient beings the precious ones from whom I have received all happiness and perfection? I must understand that it is inadequate merely to ensure that I shall not be reborn in the sufferings of the lower realms, nor is it enough to seek simply my own release from samsara. Okay. So now, it's like this, right? We have this perfect opportunity that's afforded to us by having the precious human rebirth. Okay? So now, if we use it in the right way, we can attain full, complete enlightenment, after which we can be of utmost benefit to all sentient beings, acting in a very spontaneous, manifesting in whatever form is needed to subdue sentient beings. So with that on the table as a possibility, right, if we don't go after that, and instead Here it's even saying, even if instead of going for full enlightenment, we go for our own personal liberation from samsara, that's not making the best use of our opportunity. That would be actually very selfish. Right? Actually, shameless. Right? So, why? See, aren't other sentient beings the precious ones from whom I have received all happiness and perfection? Okay. So this, we were talking about a little bit before, the drawbacks of the self-cherishing mind, right? Comparing it to a demon. Here, we also have to contemplate the advantages of cherishing others. Right? And here the thought is, actually, every single happiness that we are experiencing now, have experienced in the past, and will experience in the future, has come from others, other sentient beings. Do you need convincing? Yes. Okay. So, all of our enjoyments. There's a nice cup of tea, by the way, even though it's cold. How am I able to enjoy this? Well, even on a worldly level, the tea farmer, right? The person who plucked it, the person who packaged it, the person who transported it, the person who boiled the water, the person who made it and brought it from you. All of that happened due to others. But on a more fundamental level, since I'm experiencing some enjoyment, that has to have come from virtuous actions performed in the past. Okay? Now how does that happen? That happens in two ways, right? In particular, like enjoyments, material resources, come from practicing generosity. So, in a past life, there was a suffering sentient being who was deprived of some type of material. And because that person or animal or whatever was suffering, was in need of something, I was able to practice generosity. Right? I will take question. Oh, what, you have a question? Okay. I will take your question, but can I maybe just go finish this motivation? And actually, we're running out of time, so. Am I having dinner with you tonight? Okay, so I have that opportunity as well. Okay. All right. So I was able to practice generosity because another sentient being was deprived of some material. So in that way, right, then they actually become the cause for my attaining virtue. That virtue then becomes the cause for me to receive enjoyments in this life. Okay? All right. Then, even on a more fundamental level, it says in the text that actually every virtue is the effect of the enlightened activities of Buddha. You guys don't understand. But this is described in the Avalokiteshvara. But basically, you see, in my past life, it's not just that there was a beggar. I'm sorry, you're in the front row. And it's not that there was a beggar. That alone doesn't mean that I'm practicing generosity. Someone would have had to have told me about the advantages of practicing generosity. Right? At some point. Therefore, actually, here in the Mahayana we say that all virtue is the effect of the enlightened activities of Buddha. Therefore, even other masters in different, who might be appearing as in different spiritual traditions, we don't know. There could be Buddhas appearing in the form of a whatever, as it says in Shantideva, right? As a boat, a bridge, medicine, a nurse, whatever is going to be a benefit for sentient beings, may I manifest like that. Even inanimate objects. So of course, then a great Hindu saint or Christian saint, so forth, could in actuality be a Buddha. It's one of the reasons why we promote respect, deep respect for other traditions, because the end point is, the purpose of any type of dharma is to benefit the mind, right? And different people need different types of teachings and instructions that will then have different levels of effect. Okay, so that's three things. Then, in the future, right, the attainment of enlightenment. Enlightenment comes from bodhicitta. Bodhicitta comes from compassion. Compassion comes from suffering sentient beings. Right? Since compassion is the wish, right? May this sentient being be free from suffering. If there's no suffering sentient beings, how can we have compassion? Right? So at a very kind of at the root of it, suffering sentient beings are the source of our enlightenment. Okay. So, in general, we're talking about destroying or annihilating the self-cherishing mind. So there's two ways to do that, right? If we're saying that the self-cherishing mind is holding ourselves to be more important than others, right? We're more important than others, then we can do one of two things. Raise our concern for others, or bring down our excessive concern with ourselves, right? And those are the two basic strategies employed in the two main ways of generating bodhicitta, right? There is the equalizing and exchanging self for others, which is what we've been talking about thus far. You contemplate the disadvantages of cherishing oneself, the advantages of cherishing others, and thereby you kind of equalize your concern with yourself and others, and then you exchange. Means you cherish all sentient beings like you cherish yourself now. Whereas before, you're the highest, you're the most important, then you kind of exchange, you switch roles, and then you have that same level of concern with others. Okay? So that's what we've been talking about, right? Next paragraph is the other strategy, the 7-point cause and effect instructions. Okay? So, whereas equalizing and exchanging self for others, we're knocking ourselves down a couple notches, right? And by reflecting on the drawbacks of self-charity, and by reflecting on the advantages of cherishing others, we raise the bar a little bit. Then, in the 7-point cause and effect instructions, all sentient beings have been my mother. There is not a single one who has not. Moreover, each has been my mother, time without number, and each time has been just as kind to me as my present mother. Okay? So this is the 7-point cause and effect instructions. Understanding all sentient beings have been our mother. Remembering their kindness, wishing to repay their kindness. And then what they call the, Yong Jamba, the affectionate love, compassion, and then bodhicitta. Right? Is that 7? Yeah. 5. Oh no. Between compassion, there's what's called the laksam ninje, the extraordinary aspiration. Whereas the 5th step, compassion, is just may all sentient beings be free from suffering. The 6th step is I myself will free them from suffering. Okay? You understand the difference between the two? It's, the mere wish, which, by the way, is found in the so-called Hinayana practitioners, right? Those of you who have done, say, a Vipassana retreat, when you do the metta meditation, may all beings be happy. That's there within the so-called Hinayana practices. But there's a difference between may all beings be happy and I myself will cause them all to be happy. Right? So up to the 4th step in the equalizing and exchanging self for others, there are Hinayana practitioners who do that. But that next step, I myself will do it, that's the one that the self-cherishing mind will be the main obstacle to. Right? Because otherwise it's like, may you be happy, right? Or like, oh, may you be able to enjoy a donut. And then you say, oh, I see you have a donut there, will you give it to me? Oh, no, but, good luck, right? So I'm wishing him well, right? I'm not going to do anything, right? So that bit of kind of self-sacrifice is the distinguishing characteristic. Okay? So then here, by reflecting how all sentient beings have been on how they've been kind to us, I wish to repay their kindness, then we're generating this thought of closeness, seeing all beings as near, dear, and lovable. Okay? So at this very moment, not only are these kind of other sentient beings experiencing great suffering, but they're also running constantly to create the cause for more. There is not even a second during which they can experience a moment's happiness. If a mother's suffering is not alleviated by her own child, who else will do it? So yeah, this is, again, you see, when we reflect on the sufferings of samsara in relation to ourself, we generate the mind of what's called renunciation, the wish to be free from suffering. But here, we're reflecting on the same kind of sufferings of samsara, but in relation to our mother, in relation to others, right? They're suffering, and every moment they're creating more causes of suffering. That's what samsara is all about, right? So then thinking that in relation to others, then we generate compassion. And especially this kind of, taking the personal responsibility. I myself have to do it. There's that reflection. If a mother's suffering is not alleviated by her own child, who else will do it? Right? Even though it is up to me alone to bear the burden of eradicating the suffering of all other sentient beings, at the moment I am incapable of relieving the suffering of even one sentient being. Okay? So here, in the 7-point cause and effect instructions, we've already reached the point of laksam ninje, or the extraordinary aspiration. I myself will free all sentient beings from suffering. Then we reflect like this way. In our current situation, we're unable to do it. Yet, if I receive the enlightened holy body, and maybe it's better to say attain, like receive is like, someone's going to give it to you. It's not like that. Unfortunately. If I attain the enlightened holy body, just one ray of its light could ripen the minds of countless sentient beings, leading them to the state of greatest peace. So sometimes I also wonder, although, you see in some sutras where, the Buddha will open his mouth and then light rays will go out and purify all the sentient beings. I kind of wonder if that's to be taken literally. Because if that were the case, where are the light rays now? I mean, of course we can say we haven't received, accumulated the causes to be liberated in that way. But whatever the case, it is there in the text that, like, for example, even during the first teaching of Buddha at Sarnath that I mentioned, while he was giving the first turning of the wheel, his first 5 disciples, like, after he said, like, this is the truth of suffering, some reached the path of seeing. And then this is the truth of the cause, some reached the path of meditation. Then by the end of it, those 5 disciples had attained nirvana. Right? So, the point is, once we are enlightened, even that first day we're enlightened, we will definitely liberate sentient beings from suffering that day. Okay? Alright. Therefore, to release all other sentient beings from suffering and lead them to the sublime state of sublime happiness and enlightenment, I must attain the exalted state of Buddhahood. Okay? So that is the wishing Bodhicitta. Right? Then the attainment of Buddhahood is not without cause or conditions. Its principal cause is the 2 Bodhicittas. Therefore, I'm going to practice the profound oral teaching on transforming the mind into Bodhicitta. Engaging Bodhicitta. Okay? Okay. We are out of time. So I'm going to kind of summarize how this will be practiced. Okay? If you understand everything I've just said, you'll understand everything else. Okay? Except for this special mode of practice, conjoining this practice with the practice of Avalokiteshvara, the Buddha of compassion. Okay? So here, you'll see, like I'm on page 8 now. The actual practice, you're going to be alternating the contemplation of the root text of the 8 verses of mind training with a certain visualization. So here, page 8. With each verse, visualize from the seed syllable free at Avalokiteshvara's heart. You guys know Avalokiteshvara, right? Do you?
How many arms?
So this is 1,000 arm cherished. Okay, you guys see?
Yeah.
This, by the way, you recognize this, guys? This is the new 1,000 arm Avalokiteshvara statue at Amitabha Buddha Center in Singapore. And next month, if you look closely, actually, there's a crown here. This is just paper, painted gold. Next month, they're going to be offering a real gold crown to this. Anyway, this is Avalokiteshvara. So you visualize Avalokiteshvara in the space in front at the level of your eyebrows. So if you know how it would be in Devanagari script, that's fine. If you know how that would look in Tibetan, that's fine. If not, great, that's it. Can you hold that up? Hold that up for the, yeah. That is how it looks in Tibetan. Okay? Okay? So then, you visualize from that seed syllable. Okay? White nectar that comes from the Avalokiteshvara in front of you comes into your head. It fills your whole body, purifying all obscurations and bringing all realization of the entire path to enlightenment, from Guru devotion to Buddhahood, and purifying and granting the specific obscurations and realizations pertaining to the particular verse you're contemplating. Okay? So each verse you recite or contemplate, and then you think from the free Avalokiteshvara's heart, this nectar comes down and purifies all of your obscurations and gives you the realizations especially in relation to this verse that you're reciting. Okay? So, you see, this is a little bit of a kind of a prelude, an entree, if you will, to some of the Vajrayana practice. Okay? You know, we're saying the mind is the forerunner of all, right? So, it's a little bit strange, right? A little bit strange. there's a debate to be had, whether this is just a complete projection of our mind. Because at the end of it, you'll see, you're supposed to think that you're completely purified and you've reached the state of Avalokiteshvara. So is that a valid mind? Huh?
That's just the mind.
It's a mere projection. Anyway, there's some debate, and we gotta go. But the point is, I'm just gonna skip to the answer. You see, we are kind of locked in to a very fixed view of ourselves, right? I'm an angry person. You know, I'm whatever, so selfish. I'm like this, right? So even the grammar, I am angry. It's like this equal sign. And it becomes very fixed. So this practice, in general the practice of Vajrayana, is helping to loosen the strong identification we have with our unwholesome tendencies. And instead we try to strengthen and reinforce an identification with wholesome tendencies. Okay? I think it's very psychologically powerful, right? I mean, even, okay, to be very mundane about it, right? Even in like sports psychology, they do these studies. There's the basketball players who make the shots, you know? Then there's some who don't go on the court, but then just visualize them taking the shots, and then there's a control group, right? Scientific. Then the ones who make the shots and the ones who visualize have improvement relative to the ones. And there's no distinguishable difference between the ones who actually take the shots and those who just visualize it. So here, by having this kind of visualization that we are being purified, and then at the end, you think, okay, I'm purified of this self-cherishing mind. Then next time it comes, you're out and someone asks you for your donut, maybe you can just think, okay, wait a minute. What is this? I purified you this morning. Here's a donut. Okay? Very, very profound. Okay, then I guess the rest of it, maybe we'll talk about later.
Next time.
I really did intend to finish the whole thing, but anyway, let's stop now. Well, yeah, okay. If I'm not having dinner with you tonight and you have a question, I'll entertain. Yeah?
Just one question.
Yeah, please. Okay.
I mean, I just, like you said, there are two desires for bodhicittas. One is like, to liberate all sentient beings, and then I also like have to work for my own liberation, right?
Okay, continue.
So, I was just confused that if a person attains nirvana, then he's free from the cycles of rebirth and so then is it the will of the person by which he just say that I'll come back and then I'll go for the liberations of other beings? So does that contradict the basic definition of nirvana?
Right, okay. So, good question. So it's like this. You see, in the Mahayana system, if one attains nirvana, then it's not, okay, the mind has no beginning and it has no end. Okay. So, I was saying, for us, unliberated beings, at our time of death, a previous karmic imprint will ripen, and that will project our next rebirth. Okay, so now these arhats, they've gotten rid of the klesha. So those karmic imprints won't ripen. Okay? Now, some other schools will then say, then at the end of that life, just like a butter lamp that loses all of its butter, and the flame goes out, then there's no more person. Okay? In the Mahayana system, then that person won't get rebirth in samsara, but the mind will continue. And it will go into what they call like a subtle samadhi, a subtle body, formless, and just abide in that peace of nirvana. Okay? But then we also say, at some point the Buddhas will come and kind of wake you up and say, you haven't done all you have to do, it's time to enter the Mahayana. Okay? Right? So, there's actually a lot of debate about this. But my, I guess the essence of your question is, whereas, a bodhisattva, they are, have you studied? Okay. At a certain point of the path, one has complete control of one's rebirth. Even before enlightenment, this is just a bodhisattva. One can choose where one will be reborn. So at that time, whereas samsaric beings are getting reborn due to karma and klesha, those bodhisattvas are reborn due to their bodhicitta and pure prayers. So they're actually not taking rebirth in samsara anymore. They could take rebirth in the world, but remember, the earth is not samsara. Delhi is not samsara. I know traffic is sometimes bad. Okay? Okay? So, remember, samsara is the process of rebirth, uncontrolled rebirth due to karma and afflictions. These bodhisattvas take rebirth due to pure prayers and bodhicitta. Okay? Other questions? Yes, in the back. Could I talk about verse 6 on page 9? Yes. When someone whom I have benefited and in whom I have great hopes gives me terrible harm, I shall regard that person as my holy guru. Okay. So, in general, right, the mind of bodhicitta is wishing, to benefit all sentient beings. Okay. So if we leave one sentient being out from that, our objects of care, if one is excluded, there's no all sentient beings. If there's no all sentient beings, there's no bodhicitta. If there's no bodhicitta, there's no enlightenment. Okay? So in general, in the first verses, right, it's like all sentient beings. But then there are these problem cases that we have to pay particularly close attention to, because they will then serve as the obstacle. Right? So, people who have given us terrible harm are problem cases. Right? So, in general, actually, in the patience chapter of Shantideva's Bodhisattva Charyavatara, there's a lot more that one would, could, should meditate and contemplate on this particular problem case, right? But in general, there's two ways that I like to think about this, okay? One is, I regard that person as my holy guru, okay? In general, the guru is the most, guru is like the highest, right? So because it's like, we have, let's say we have compassion for all sentient beings except this one who's harmed me, right? Then we need to cherish this one. We need to especially work on cherishing this one. So then if we see, I'm going to see this person like my guru, my precious guru, then it can help us generate compassion for him or her. But the other sense that I also like to think about is, in general, gurus teach us something, right? So the fact that, we now have benefited someone, and instead of benefiting us back, they've harmed us, and we freak out, we get upset. What does that show about our original intention to benefit them? Strings attached. Conditional love, right? You scratch my back, I scratch yours. We have that deal going on. But as soon as the other person doesn't do that, we freak out, we get upset. So then that harming and our reacting to it like, what? After all I've done for you, right? That shows us, like our guru, or like our holy gurus would do, that we're not yet there with the type of unconditional altruism that is needed on the Mahayana path. Okay? Now, I'll say that. Yes?
Venerable, as you said, the entire Buddha Dharma is about mind playing. So I have a particular question about, let's say there is one affliction that I am working on, and another teacher in the past here has said that the progress could be very incremental and it not be overnight. And I'm particularly fine with that. That the progress is very slow, etc., etc. But when I see myself progressing and there is suddenly another episode of, let's say, anger happens, I feel that I find it very discouraging. So I wanted your advice on how to deal with that kind of failure. So that one can continue the practice.
Yeah. So how you deal with that type of failure is not to call it a failure. That's the short answer. So it's like this, right? Rome wasn't built in a day. You know that expression? Okay. So, we're in samsara. Okay. So we all have afflictions. Okay. It's going to take a long time, because remember, from beginningless lifetimes, we've been under the control of our afflictions, right? And with any kind of habit, the more you do it, the more ingrained it becomes, right? So we are totally habituated to anger when people say, provocative things to us. That's why we have a short fuse, due to habituation. So, now we see the faults as faults, and we're trying to move our life in a different direction. That's great. That's awesome. So, it is more difficult to control the mind than it is to control the body and speech. So for now, right, also don't think you're going to abandon your anger this year. Maybe not even this life. Right? But although you get angry, can you then not say anything? Not do anything that is motivated by that anger? That's great. Right? So, see the glass is half full. Right? And then also, now, by the way, I totally get where you're coming from. We're all our own harshest critics, right? And I, had bouts of this myself. It's like, I've been a monk for 8 years and now this is happening and I can't believe it, right? So, also a bit of, compassion for yourself, right? Does beating yourself up help? No. So, instead of that type of mind, it is helpful to learn from our mistakes, right? But have a little bit of, compassion and understanding for yourself. And just, it's not that big a deal, actually. Right? Okay, I got angry. I'm not going to dwell on it. What can I learn from this situation? Okay, fine, I'll try better tomorrow. Right? Otherwise, there's that, the dwelling, I am an angry person, and then it's that kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. So page 11 will dedicate the merits. So may all the suffering and causes of suffering of sentient beings rub it upon me right now, and may all sentient beings receive all my happiness and virtue. May the precious Bodhicitta that has not yet arisen grow, and may that which has been generated never degenerate but increase forevermore. May I never be discouraged even for a moment from practicing the deeds of the Bodhisattvas for the sake of others, by completely renouncing anything done for my own sake, and by engaging in the holy actions of the kind founder Guru Shakyamuni Buddha. Through these merits, may I quickly attain the state of the great compassionate one, and without exception, lead all other sentient beings who are most high and noble to that enlightened state. So we're also dedicated for the long lives of the spiritual friends, particularly this one is the Dalai Lama, Lojong, the flourishing of the holy Dharma, and that all of the temporal sufferings that are experiencing sentient beings be instantly pacified. In particular, may there be no war, terrorist attacks, natural disasters, poverty, any undesirable thing, illness, anything undesirable. May they all be completely pacified, and may sentient beings, experience even the temporary happiness within samsara up until they're able to become liberated. Okay. Thank you very much.